Welcome to the second part video of the three-part series tutorial on the WPO widgets. My name is Sylvain Paillard and I am the CTO and co-founder of Boxalino. This video is the sequel to the part 1, which you should definitely watch prior to watch part 2. In this video, we will go in the use case settings to understand them in depth, as well as A/B testing, segmentation, and adding use cases from best practices. Now, each use case has these three tabs: the values, the settings, and the advanced tabs. The values and the advanced will show properties that are specific to the use case. So that means that it's not always going to show field and values depending on what you're selecting. And we can see that here, for instance, we have a field, but we have no value. Here we have the value. Here on the advanced, we have an operator, an OR condition, while here we have a minimum value and a maximum value, in addition to the boost weight, of course, which is always there. So what does that mean? That means that each use case comes with its own scheme of parameter. Now, to understand the scheme of parameters of the use case, you need to basically go here and you can see what use case it is. So this one is a product attribute scorer. And here, this one is a product attribute promoter. And we have the documentation in the public knowledge base of Boxalino for all of these different use cases. But most of the time, you will actually add use cases by using this orange button here and selecting a use case from there. And there, the best practices, which are listed, give you the information of how to define the parameters of these aspects. So this is actually the way we will see it after. Now, while the content of the values and the advanced tabs is not always the same depending on the use case, the setting tab is always the same. So here we can see that on these three use cases, we have the same settings. Here, just this exception of the system filter, but that's just because we have put it as a filter. Otherwise, all of the parameters there are all the same. So let's go through the different parameters that we have. Here, we have a name. The name is just the label that you give to the logic. So the idea is to write here something which is as easy to understand for you and anybody who would look at the lists. So here, price bigger than 0, people can understand. Maybe you want to be more specific and want to say product price bigger than 0. And as you can see, as soon as I change this name, it is also changing the label that appears here. We will see after in the test view that it is also updating the report of the pie chart. So it's actually really a good idea if when you are creating your use cases, that you're providing them with name that makes sense to you and to anybody who is looking at the environment. Then we have the OR group. So the OR group defines use cases that should work in combination. So here, for instance, we saw before that we could set the stock to also be a filter. So now if you have these two logic, the stock bigger or equal to 1 and the product price bigger than 0, then they both need to be true. But if I would say here a group price or stock, and I would put the same group here, then I would actually indicate to the system that it is enough that any of these two elements in the OR groups to be true so that the condition is fulfilled. So this is a way to make an OR condition between several filters. Now let's draw it back to where we were before. Now, the max weight. So the max weight is an optional criteria. In general, it is not needed. here, for instance, we have this 100,000, which is defined also by default the max weight. That simply means that the max weight has been automatically set to match the weight. But I might want to define a different max weight in a specific situation where the use case might affect the weight, might give the weight several times to the product. So for instance, if we are saying that the use case would provide a weight in the score for the favorite category of the customer, then it might be that the product is referenced in several of his favorite categories, in which case the score would be given more than once. If that's not wanted, then you can top the score with the max weight and force the system to give a maximum of 100,000, not a reference unit of 100,000, which is what we see here. So as a best practice, you can either leave it empty or set it with the same value. And in special cases, maybe you want to either not set it or set it with a higher value to allow for these multiple weight effects to take place. Then we have the position. So the position, they go from the position 0 to n. So here, for instance, if I type 0 to 1, that would mean that this filter, that only products with a price higher than 0 apply, that this filter would only apply for the first 2 products of the recommendation. So that means that I could, in this way, force the system to mix the recommendations that are appearing to the user so that different filters apply to different position of the recommendation. But by default, they are basically not set. That means that the system applies them for all of the positions that are indicated here. Important information, positions are not allowed in the search and Navi WPO. They're only allowed for product recommendation cases. Then we have the override label. So the override label gives us the possibility to change the label that is shown to the user in case this filter is true. So here, that means that I could write here price bigger than 0, and that would replace what the user sees in case this filter would be applied. Of course, in such a case, we would have a default label, and we only define the override label for the use cases that are not always applying. An example case we use it often is when there is a use case showing personalized recommendations that have been calculated by our AI. Now, we might not have them all the time. So when we have them, we want to specify to the user, oh, these are your personalized recommendations. But when we don't have them, then maybe we want to show something more vague, like, oh, something you might like, or part of our most well-selling products, and so on and so forth. So this is for all of these parameters except these last 2, which are by far the most important. The first one is the tests. So the test basically means that I would like to create an A/B test in which the product price or any other of the use cases would be only applying to a certain variant of the test. So let's see how it works. So here you can see that now I have to select a test variant in which I currently only have control. The reason is because in order to have another test variant, I have to click on this blue part here. So here, if I click on Create Experiments, now I can give another variant name like test A and add it. Now I can define that this test A has an equal distribution of the visitors, which is the default, but I can also define that I would like to manage this distribution differently. So for instance, I only want to show this variant to 10% of the visitors because it's a very risky variant, it's changing a lot of things, and I don't want to take the risk to show it to half of my visitors. Now, our best practice is that, except in a very, very small amount of cases, not to do that. We recommend to always distribute the traffic evenly, except when it is absolutely necessary to do otherwise. And the reason is because when you analyze A/B test results, the bigger the difference of distribution is, the longer it will take to have statistical relevance in the results. So actually, by doing this, I will make the test significantly longer than it needs to be, simply because I'm reducing the exposure of the test in that variant by a fair margin. And that's why we recommend to always keep it at 50-50%, which is the default when you're not defining any weights. But in case you need to define such distribution, it is possible and it is supported here. So now that I have saved my version, you can see here that I have these three colors which are appearing: all, control, and test A. And now I can define that this use case goes to test A, which will give it the color of test A. I can also define that a use case, like this one, for instance, is connected to control, which will give it this yellow color. Everything which is not defined is white and means it is applying for all variants. So what does it mean here? It means that we have two test variants, the control and test A, 50-50, so 50% of the visitors will see the control and 50% of the visitors will see test A. Now, the control composes of all of the white use cases plus the yellow one. So the control is yellow plus all of the whites. The test A, this blue-purple color, is consisting of this product price bigger than 0 and all of the whites. So this one applies everywhere, but this one only applies in test A and this one only applies in control. So this is how the A/B testing works, and then I can simply save my widget and release my changes and publish my changes, and then I have an A/B test live. So what we just went over here is the only thing that needs to be done except publishing, and of course highly recommended before that you test, that we will see after how to do that. But that's the only step which is needed except publishing to set up an A/B test. So it's directly in your widget and you can define it like this and publish it. Before we look a bit more at the details, let's look at the segments. So the segments, this is basically if you would like for a use case to only apply for a section of the users, a segment of the users, like only for visitors that are coming from a specific traffic source, or only for the mobile users, or only for the customers from a certain group, or any other things for that matter. And there are two ways you can define segments. We will only see it very superficially in this video, but we will do other videos in the future to cover the segmentation in detail. But here I can basically add a quick segment, and here I can select one of these standard options. So it can be the referral campaign, it can be the browser type, it can be the device category. And then by selecting these, then I can enter the value here, like smartphone, and then add it. And this will basically make this device category smartphone appear here, and then I can select it and connect it to that segment. And that basically means that the price will be checked to be bigger than 0 only for the people with the device category, which is smartphone. Now, there is a complete view here in the in the merchandising menu here in the segments, where such segments can be defined with much more detail and much more granularity. We're not going to see that now, but at the end it doesn't matter. Every segment appears in this list, and you can select the one that you want, and you can connect the segments to the use case that you would like to apply it to. So that's basically how to define the segments. So now we have seen all of the options that we have in our setting tab of the use case. Now let's roll back some of these changes. So we are going back to our initial configuration. And now the only thing that we have not seen except the wizard, but we will not see the wizard in this video because it's actually now being a little bit obsolete as we have this new way with the best practice, but it still stays because some of our customers like to use it. But now we're going to see how we can add something. So as we said initially, this widget doesn't really do what it should do. It's supposed to be for personalization, a recommendation of products which are personalized, but it's not personalized at all. It's only selecting products that are bigger, price bigger than 0, a stock larger or equal to 1, and rank them according to their all-time sales count. So let's add a criteria which will be about such personalization. So here, going into the WPO, there I can see that I have these 3 tabs: what to start with for the go live, what could be A/B tested first, and what else could be experimented with. So the first one is really the most obvious things to do in the context of the WPO. So here in the context of the welcome. The what could be A/B tested first are ideas of what typically is not considered to go live, but should be tested as it has an interesting potential value. And then the what else could be experimented with, these are more like advanced cases that are important to know exist, but that we don't recommend that you look into, except if you really have already exhausted the important other aspects, or because you have a special situation where you know that you would like to address these things right away. Now, if we start with the first one, what we can see here is that we have these different groups that we saw in the other videos. So we have this product and content statistics, product and content attributes, visitor journey personalization, customer journey personalization. So the visitor journey personalization relies on the fact that the prior clicks of the visitor, so it works for anyone who is visiting the website and has done some clicks, that no need to be logged in, anything like that. And the customer journey personalization does go typically in the purchase history, but for that we require that we have been able to identify the customer. We don't need to identify the customer on the specific session he's in. It might be that he did a login in a prior session and just came back, and we keep recognizing him or her with the same cookie. But whether it is something we know from the current session or prior session, we have a connection to his purchase history. So as we want to do personalization, then we will start with these 2 very basic ones. So promote products or contents with attribute values matching previously viewed product, and promote products or content with attribute values matching previously bought products. So here, the first one, I will click on it. Then I get the detail of what it is and how it is suggested to apply it. Here I can see that I need to select a field. So the logic is that I will personalize, but based on a field that I select. So it could be the brand or the categories, or then depending on my environment, some other properties if they are available, like the gender, the price range, or things like that. And how to configure it? Well, it's pretty simple. The only thing I need to do is to actually select that field. So I'm going to add this to my environment, close it, and now here you can see that I have this viewed product attribute. Note that here we have this blue color for journey optimization. So the rules there are very simple. Everything which is blue is about personalization. Everything which is red, which is about the current active campaigns, and everything else is this violet like we have here. So here I'm going to actually select a property. So here, as you can see, we have a lot of properties to go through. We have this helper here to find such a property, and there we can see these three blocks. So we have here the standard, which are all of the product properties that you are sending us through the product export you have configured with our system. So these are typically the same product properties and names and values as you have in your product information system, management system, the PIM, or maybe directly in the eShop, or in some cases in your ERP. Then we have all of the BigQuery standard fields. So these are all of the fields that we automatically generate for you with our data warehouse environment. And then we have custom fields. These are for things which have been done in BigQuery, but are not standard. They have been done specifically for your account in a customized way. So here, if I would like to select, for instance, the brand, then the brand is definitely going to be a property that is provided by the shop. So it will be in the standard. I can search for it, and it appears here in the standard. So I can select it and add it, and that's it. So that's how you configure real-time personalization on the prior viewed brands in Boxalino. Now let's do the same for the customer journey. You will see it's pretty much the same process. I go again here. I select this time the customer journey for the purchased product attributes. I add it. I close. And here I do the same. Select the brand, add it. And now I have two elements. One which is purchased product attributes, and the other one which is a viewed product attributes. At least what we should do is update the label to see that it is about brand. In both cases, it might be a good idea to rename them even more in case the viewed product attribute name doesn't resonate for you to be easy enough. So we can say real-time personalization on the brands, for instance. So that's completely up to you what you would like to name these things. What matters is that when you look at the list, then you have something that that makes sense. That makes sense for you. So now we have added the personalization that was missing in that home personalization recommendations. Of course, we can go much further than that, do different flavors of recommendation. Let me underline that Boxalino has many advanced personalization use cases. This is the simplest one, which is based on the brands people buy or on other attributes or the brands people have clicked on. But we have many other things, including discovery tags, including AI, neural collaborative filtering, which are providing much more advanced selection of personalization. But for the sake of this video, the only thing we try to do is to explain you the widget in the administration, how everything works. So we will stay with these two very simple cases. So now we can save our changes, but we can also save and test our changes. And the difference is that the save will keep the changes, so we will not lose them, but it will not update the test environment so you can test the effect in the test view. While if you click on the save and tests, then it will take a bit longer, but then you can go in the test view and test the results. And as this is what we are going to do, then I'm going to click on save and test. So now the system informs us that the saving and deployment of our test configuration has worked. Rest assured, save and test has no impact whatsoever on your production environment. This will only be the case after we publish the changes. There we only deployed the changes in the test mode so that we can test the results.